In the meantime, let's cross now to my colleague, Abra Barbier. She's somewhere around here. Abra, over to you.
Nompu, thank you very much. Yes, I am in front of the dome, at the entrance to the dome, which of course is the parliamentary precinct, and that is where the minister will be delivering his speech at 2 o'clock this afternoon. So my job for the day is to speak to as many political parties and various entities based here in Parliament who have been very vocal about what they are hoping to hear the minister say today. And in the case of COSATU, I'll be speaking with Matthew Parks right now, who's very vocal in terms of what they don't want to hear the minister speak about today, and that is about tax, personal income tax. You've sent out a statement saying that COSATU is very concerned that that is going to be where the minister is going to have to dip in to assist the country.
So we're quite concerned because workers are really struggling to cope with the cost of living. There's been huge rises in transport, electricity, municipal tariffs, and workers just are not coping. They spend most of their salaries on electricity and getting to work. We think if there's this pressure on the state, there's other ways to raise money. Number one, we would want to give the South African Revenue Service at least an extra 3 billion rand to boost tax compliance by 60 billion rand. We think it would be absolutely immoral to increase the VAT. Workers just can't cope. And when you increase the VAT, all you do, besides plunging workers into debt, you take money out of the economy. We should rather focus on how to improve tax compliance. SARS has shown itself to be remarkably efficient. They're offering a pathway, but I think for us, when people are struggling, the last thing we should do is to increase the suffering of workers more.
Matthew, now, I want to touch on that point because everybody who we've all spoken to, everybody's complaining about the rising cost of living, and we often speak about the middle class who's also battling at the moment, and for some reason they use the middle class as the comparison. If the middle class are struggling, then you must know things are really bad. But this is something that we've been discussing. This isn't the first time, it's not the second time. This has been an ongoing conversation for many years. When are we going to see a turning point?
So that's why we hope today Treasury will kind of abandon its normal budget cutting approach, which is just simply plunge public services into absolute disrepair, making it more difficult for workers, for businesses to get the services that are required to grow the economy. What we need to do is to fix the state. If the state is operational, like Home Affairs, like police, like the ports, like Eskom, Metro Rail, then society, workers, businesses grow, they benefit. I think for us it's about stimulating the economy, making sure the infrastructure program is rolled out, making sure we have reliable and also affordable electricity, not skyrocketing electricity prices, making sure Transnet can deliver our mining, our manufacturing, agricultural goods to our markets. That's a major source of jobs and revenue, again for the state to fund its balance sheet. Make sure Metro Rail municipalities are all operational. So for us it's not about shortcuts. Cutting doesn't resolve anything. Underpaying a nurse is not going to grow the economy. So for us it's about removing the economic obstacles, fixing the state, stimulating the economy, and ramping up public employment programs to help our 12 million people, especially young people, find a path to finding work, get the skills and experience they need to find jobs. But I think for us, if we keep looking for shortcuts, we're not going to find it. And a VAT hike for us is a shortcut when we should really be saying how do we grow the economy, how do we create jobs, and that will generate the tax revenue the state requires.
Matthew, thank you so much. I'm now going to be speaking with the chairperson of the ANC. I have all the MPs, they just scattered all over. So Eddie, I hope that you are okay moving. Good morning, sir. Mr. Joe Maswangani, chairperson of the Standing Committee on Finance. Let me just jump into it. This finance budget speech is being described as an extremely important one for the first time in many years, and that's got everything to do with the GNU. Why is this budget speech today so important?
It's quite important because it must speak to young people who are the future of this country. There's a problem of youth unemployment in this country. The president has spoken about a public employment plan. The minister must speak to that plan. How is the government going to roll out the plan to create jobs? The president has spoken about industrialization. We want to hear from government. How is that industrial policy going to be implemented where the private sector will come on board to create jobs? Because the one thing that is also important, government must begin to invest more on productive sectors of the economy. We are not saying that they should neglect the social development, but the productive sector is quite important to grow the economy, to create jobs, fight poverty.
Thank you so much, sir. Let me jump over to your colleague, Dr. Mark Burke of the DA. You heard what the chairperson said just now. What is the DA stance on what should be coming out of the speech today?
The DA and our partners are all focused on jobs and the economy, but the DA believes that the private sector is best positioned to create these jobs. We need to open up our ports, we need to concession them so private participants can participate there. We need to get our electricity grid open so people can have rooftop solar that feeds into the grid. We need to basically let loose the rocket fuel of this economy for South Africa's economy to grow. We cannot see an increase in taxes today. We cannot see an increase in VAT or personal income tax. South Africans are already overburdened by tax. We need to create an environment where businesses succeed, create jobs and grow the economy, and we're not going to do that by taxing people anymore.
Dr. Burke, thank you. I'll catch up with you after the speech. I'm now speaking with the EFF and their TG, Ompile Mautwe. Tax. I mean, you are a party for the people on the ground, and tax is going to affect, if it's going to be increased, they are going to be the people who are most affected. What are your expectations today?
No, thank you very much for having us, and greetings to the viewers at home. Look, it will be very disappointing for the minister to even start by thinking of increasing the tax for people, because remember, when VAT, for an example, was increased from 14% to 15%, they said it was a temporary measure to try to resolve the issue of COVID. But what was surprising by then is that he cut corporate income tax. So how do you increase value-added tax and then cut corporate income tax? You're actually saying the people who've been making more money must continue to make more money, and the poorest of the poor must continue to be poor. So we reject anything that suggests that our people must be taxed more. Corporate income tax must be increased, VAT must be reduced back to 14% because it was a temporary measure. So you can't have something that is temporary now becoming permanent. So we are going to reject that if that comes to be presented today. But we will not be shocked because remember, this is a new liberal government of national unity. So the minister is just, having more interest of white people than black people, because who is in business, who is in corporate? It's white people. So they must remain untouched. Our people must continue to linger in poverty, in unemployment, and in high levels of inequality in this country. So he doesn't really care for our people, so we will not be shocked. He might even be seeing that speech for the first time today, by the way. That's so much how he's not involved.
Jump over. I'm so sorry to do this. I must just get in ActionSA quickly. We're running out of time. Mr. Beasley, thank you. You are big on corruption.
Yes.
Just speak to me about that briefly.
Yeah, so it's massive. I mean, people are saying there's not enough money around at the moment, but it's not a case that there's not enough money. It's just a case there's too much corruption and too much incompetence. I sit on SCOPA, and the leakage that's actually happening in the system is incredible. I mean, last week we had the Workmen's Compensation Fund. It's had a disclaimed audit report for 12 years. So that means the auditor can't actually audit the books. And I asked the Auditor General what's the one thing that she would do to change government in this country, and she would say corrupt officials in orange overalls. And that's what we need. Unless we get accountability in the system, we're never going to get things right. We can throw as much money as we want to the state, but if it's just being leaked through plundering and incompetence, it's not going to help anybody. And it actually starts at the top. We say the cabinet is the most bloated, inefficient and corrupt. And that just flows right through. You just see ministers going on overseas travels at the moment. The Deputy Minister of Finance, he was a former shop steward. He spent R1 million going on a trip to London with him and his wife. And people are hungry in our country and they're wanting more money, but we got to cut down the wastage.
Mr. Beasley of ActionSA, thank you so much for your time. Well, there you have it. We'll be catching up with other parties later on in the show, but back to you guys in the studio.
Thanks very much, Abra.